So yeah, today we'll go through a little bit of surfboard knowledge. We've got a few questions written down, but Beth, you might as well start us off. See what did you want to know about surfboards?
Okay, so I haven't got my own board, so I'm fairly beginner. I've only ever hired them, so I've only used a foam board so far. But I would like to get my own, ideally this summer. So it's just a bit more advice on what to get. I've got some ideas from what I've read. Getting like a mini mal.
Yeah.
Like 7.2 to 7.6 is what I read would be good for my size, but just a bit more detail really, and a bit more about that. And then if you did progress more, what the next stage after that would be. Though I'm sure that's a long way off.
Yeah, for sure. So with surfboards, there is so much variety out there that it can be quite easy to sort of miss what you're looking for and get confused over whether I want a big fat round nose on the board or a pointing nose, or whether I want really wide or whether it has to be long. And there's so many different variations in there that it can be quite hard to pin them down. What you've got to think of when you're looking to buy a board is the be all and end all is that you want to be able to catch waves. So I'm sure you've heard of people getting boards that are a bit too short and struggling. Yeah. The best thing for your progression of your surfing to continue is that you catch lots of waves and you ride lots of waves. And the more you ride, the more you're going to get. So that's got to be your first consideration with the board, is to make sure that it's going to enable you to catch enough waves to progress. The mini mal that you mentioned is a really good go-to beginner board or sort of intermediate board. The reason it's called a mini mal is the name for a long board, and a mini mal is basically a long board but a little bit shorter. Long boards are usually 9 foot plus. Mini mals are more around, like you say, the 7'6" sort of range. The reason they're good boards for progressing off of a foamy is that they still got that nice, what we call a full template. So they've got a nice round nose, nice sort of straight rails, and then a nice curved tail. Or so they can have various different tail shapes. But what having that full template does, it gives the board a lot of volume. So you have two aspects that are really going to help you to catch the waves. One is the volume, which is the physical amount of foam. Now, a board can have a lot of volume if it's long, or if it's wide, or if it's both. So a mini mal's is pretty long, it's pretty nice and wide, it's got a good bit of volume. The other benefit of going for a mini mal, something that sort of length you were talking about, is that the second part of catching a wave is the planing area of the board, and that's the surface area of it. So you could get all that volume that you've got in a mini mal for going for a board, say 6'6", really wide and pretty thick. But because that hasn't got the planing area, it wouldn't be as easy. You could have identical volume, but it wouldn't be able to catch waves as easy. If that planing area is basically the area that is pushing on the water, so it's going to keep you on top. Planing is basically when your board is just nicely slipping over the top of the surface rather than sort of ploughing through it. Okay. The length you were talking about is pretty spot on. As I said, there is so much variety in the board when you start looking at thickness and the shape and everything. But as a very rough guide, if you're going for a mini mal, we normally recommend something in the region of about 1.5 foot taller than you are. That would be sort of sorry, how tall are you?
5'2".
You're 5'2", so you'd be looking at sort of 6'8" as an absolute minimum, I'd say. But going up higher than that is going to be better. The reason why it's sort of got to be a little bit relative to your height is that when you're learning through, I'm assuming when you talk about you wanting to progress, you're looking to get onto turning the board, getting a bit more control, riding along the line. In order to do that, you're going to need a board that, relative to your size, that you're able to actually turn. Now, something that around that, so I would say probably for you, something in the region of 7'2", something like that, would be good size. It's not too big that you're not going to be able to turn it. Okay, if you turn a board, if the board's set like that, you need to be able to sink one rail of it, and that board goes and turns. Okay, if you've got a huge if you went straight from a foam board to a long board, you might find that really difficult. It's a lot of board to handle. You might find it quite difficult to learn that turn to start with. The other thing that a mini mal does is it gives you a really nice kind of a little bit of an appreciation of different styles of surfing. So it allows you to experience what it's like to turn a board fairly sharply. Once you get used to it, you will be able to turn a mini mal quite well, carve up and down the wave. If you enjoy that side, you might go, okay, after the mini mal, I'm going to move on to a board that's going to enable me to carve a lot more. So you might drop down a size, start thinking of something like a fish board, which is a bit shorter, but a bit wider generally, and really nice, smooth flowing turns. You might think that the bit that you love is going fast and then right at the end of the wave as it's breaking, trying to sort of hit that. Then you want to put it in onto more of a sort of agile board, like a short board, a bit more performance-y. If, on the other hand, you stand up on the board, you do one little turn and you start cruising along and you're like, I just love that sensation of just being in the curl and tune with the wave, cruising along. You might even go, okay, I've got used to this mini mal. I want to get something longer. Because then those longer boards, you're going to get more of that sort of cruise and flow around. So I think as much as there's not many people who get a mini mal and stay on the mini mal for the rest of their surfing life,
okay,
it's a really good opportunity to basically experience a lot of different styles of surfing and find out which one floats your boat. If you enjoy one kind, that will sort of naturally guide you through to your next board.
I guess you don't really know till you try it as well.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That would be a big one. I'd say you're saying that you want to buy a board. Hopefully when we're back open again, which is looking like is in the pipeline now. We've got, I'm trying to think in that range, I think we've probably got either 3 or 4, depending on what stage of the ding repair I left it at last year.
I think we're on 3 at the moment.
In that area. Is it 3?
I think we're on 3.
Okay. So yeah, but anyway, we've got a few boards in that range that you're more than welcome during one of the club sessions. Just grab it out the container, take it out and have a little play. And then you go afterwards, you can sort of feed back to me and Ross, okay, I liked this. I found, you could say like, let's say for example, I found it really easy to catch lots of waves, but I couldn't really turn it. And we'll be able to tell you whether either that's kind of actually you were using the wrong technique to turn it and we can help you with that. Or it might be that you were doing everything right, but it just wasn't the right board for you and it felt a bit sluggish for you, in which case swap to another. And the more boards you try, the more likely it is that when you do buy one, that board will be one that you'll sort of click with and keep going through.
Yeah, I've been looking at, sorry, carry on.
No, you go.
I've been looking at second-hand ones a bit on, like second-hand surfboards. And a few have popped up. I've sort of been like, oh, do I just get one?
Well,
I can sort of stand up, not that consistently, but I can stand up, but I'm still quite beginner. So it's just
you were getting some
that stage of knowing when to get one, but you can't just stay on a foam board forever and then not progress. So it's sort of knowing when's the right time as well.
That's I mean, from the way I remember you surfing in that last club session, I would say you definitely, it's not going to be too far off when you're ready to go on a mini mal. But I would say you definitely want to try and get used to riding that unbroken wave a little bit more. I seem to remember you had a couple on the inside, like the reforms, even on the foamy, that you got some really nice long rides.
Yeah, that was the first time the waves have been sort of like suitable to do that. Like before that, it was like big waves and stuff, so I had to be in white water. So that, I'm still new to the unbroken wave.
That is one thing that you'll find with, once you get onto sort of fiberglass and epoxy boards, they're not designed for surfing in the white water.
Yeah.
They're designed for that extra little bit of power that you get from the unbroken face of a wave. So if you're, have you got your own foamy, or have you've been borrowing foamies off first? Yeah. So what you might find is that getting a mini mal is a good board to get, so that when the waves are right for you, you can take it out. Mm-hmm. But it is going to be challenging to surf it in the white water, just because we're talking about that planing area will certainly help. But if you imagine that the volume in the planing area in an 8-foot foamy is a lot more than in, say, a 7'2" mini mal. Mm-hmm. So that means that what those two things do is allow the board to float and give it that speed to catch the waves. What it also does is when the wave doesn't have as much power and you're not moving as fast, it keeps the board afloat as well. So that's why foamies are always used in the white water. Once you get onto the unbroken wave with the board going faster, you know that sort of rocker, the curve that you have along boards, the very slight bend. What that's doing as the boards are going along the surface is actually generating lift. So the faster you're going, the more the board's rising up out of the water. So hence the faster it's going. as soon as that board slows down, it doesn't have quite enough volume and that sort of planing area to keep itself at that level, where a foamy would, it will sink a little bit lower. So you'll find that slower speed that you experience in the white water, if you're surfing a minimal, is going to be a lot harder to get the board to do anything really.
Okay.
But you'll probably still find yourself switching between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Second-hand boards are definitely a good shout. I think it's a great thing to get a brand new board. It's really nice to have one made for you, or to go pick one up off the rack. But for your very first board, it's like your very first car. You are going to smash it. Okay, you're going to fall funny on it. You're going to be carrying
I never
it.
smashed my car.
No, I never smashed my car. I smashed my mum.
Go into a doorway or something.
But yeah,
smack it on the door frame.
Yeah.
That's
It will be
carrying that board. You're going, like Ross said, you're going to spin around. You're going to accidentally knock it against a rock, or you're going to surf, or you're going to fall funny and sort of put your elbow into the deck. And even if without any of that, if you did absolutely no damage to it at all, personally, I think that with a new board, you've always got that in the back of your mind that you might go, oh, I'm just going to pull out of that one because I'm worried I might hurt.
Yeah, I wasn't going to go for a new board anyway. It's also because of everything that's going on was making me want to buy one sooner. Because say if you can't hire them, or say if the clubs aren't open and everything, it was like if it's going to drag on till like July, August. This is before they've said like probably July will be okay. So I didn't want to go a whole summer without surfing. But...
Oh no, especially now.
I feel that.
Was that Ross?
I say, yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, so I was just sort of like tempted, and because I couldn't surf as well, I was like, well, if I'm going to just buy a board, then that'll be fun.
No, it is. And also getting your first board, it's a good moment when you're in. But I would say trying as many different boards as you can is really key, and also to get advice from someone. So whether that's in our ladies club session or whether it's just surfing with a friend, but if you're just because you struggle on a board when you first get on it, doesn't mean it's not right for you.
Yeah.
What you want is someone who's knowledgeable about it to look at it and decide whether either the reason why you're struggling is because you're not using the right technique, which is something you can fix, and then that board will feel better and better and better, or whether actually the board is wrong for you, and what do you do? It's not going to quite do what you want. So it's just try as many as you can, really.
It's just when that's going to be, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, we'll hopefully have some news soon about reopening Big Green, and I think things like the club sessions and that we'll undoubtedly have to make some changes to it to keep everyone safe. But given that everyone has their own board, their own equipment, with very few exceptions, I mean, you've got your own wetsuit, just to keep the board, and we'll make sure that we get the right procedures to clean everything at the end. I don't think it will be too long. I hope, fingers crossed, that we're able to be back in at some point.
Yeah.
So have you got any other questions?
So obviously the length of the board, you're saying like 7.2 to 7. Well, you said from 6.8, but is there like a certain volume that is like good for beginners to look out for, or is there like a certain volume that would definitely be too small? You do will vary, as you say, like in thickness and everything, as well as
volume is a relatively new dimension that's been put on surfboards. I say relatively new because it's probably still like 10, 15 years, something like that. But in the scheme of surfing, it's a relatively new dimension. And a lot of focus when it first came out, everyone was like, I need to have this volume. So I'm usually quite low to sort of give advice on the volume because it's one of many dimensions that you have on a board. You have the three main ones, which are usually written on the board, which is the length, the width, and the thickness. But you can have, say, 3 different boards, all that are the same length, same width, same thickness, but very, very different rail shapes, very different tail shapes, very different noses, everything like that. And the boards all behave completely differently. So, for example, you could have one that was very pointy in the nose, very pointy in the tail, but still had the same width and length and thickness at its thickest point. as a board that had a nice round flowing template and would be perfect for you. The other one is a step up board to go onto big waves, like seriously big waves.
Yeah.
So the volume is a useful aspect in there. My knowledge of volume is pretty limited.
That's all right.
around once you get like around sort of short board size, so a lot of pros are riding somewhere around sort of the high 20s and low 30 litres, depending on their size. Most the short boards that you'll see will be in that range. Once you start getting to fatter boards, fishes and stuff, you're getting up to 35 litres, that kind of range. I would say a mini mile is probably going to be around the maybe 45 to 50-ish. Litres,
yeah, I feel like I've heard 45 somewhere for a beginner-ish.
Yeah, but as I said, like I wouldn't focus on that too much.
No, okay.
Especially when you're looking at a second-hand board, because it's a relatively new measurement. There's most of the second-hand. I've never bought I've bought a lot of second-hand boards, and I've never bought one that's got a volume written on it as a dimension.
Okay. You see it a lot on second-hand surfboards. On
You'll
the Facebook page, people seem to write about that a lot, and I've been to like a Women and Waves thing before where they were saying, like, I couldn't remember what they said, but they said like, oh, you shouldn't really go below a certain amount when you're quite new, and just keep an eye out for the volume. But yeah,
the thing is also it's more to do with, it's all relative to your size. So for example, you're 5'2", I'm 6'1". Even if we are exactly the same level, looking to do exactly the same thing on exactly the same waves, I would need a board with significantly more volume than you. So to say an absolute no, don't go below volume is quite hard to do, because it depends on who you are, what wave you're going to be riding, what size you are, what weight you are, everything like that. So it's quite hard to give a sort of absolute like that. I think 45 litres in my head seems like a good sort of guide range. But what's it? I mean, when you see boards on secondhand surfboards or any of those sort of Facebook groups, just ping, like, either tag us in it, tag the surf school in it, or like screenshot it and email it, or send it to me or Ross.
Yeah,
and we'll give you our opinion on it.
Okay, yeah, that'd be really good. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Never buy a board without looking at it. Don't just buy a board. Once you know about surfboards, and maybe you've learned a little bit about how to do your own ding repairs and stuff like that, you can get an all right guide of a board just by looking at it. But for your first board, you want to pick that board up, you want to feel it, you want to put it under your arm. If you can't get your arm around it to carry it to the beach, it's going to be a pretty frustrating board to use.
That is the other thing, is I'm really bad at carrying them. Like, I've got wrist problems as well.
Okay.
So foam boards, I really, really struggle. I know a lot of people say that, but I really struggle.
Yeah.
I have to put it on my head usually. So it's that is a consideration. And also, it sounds silly, but like fitting it in the car, like,
I mean,
if I can't fit it in the car, then I can't. I'll have to get the roof racks. But I live in Truro, so wherever I go, you have to drive. So that is another thing to think about. But you have to be able to surf it as well.
But things like that are a lot of considerations that some people miss when they're buying a new board. So things like, does it fit in my car? If you live in let's say you live in an apartment, can you actually get it around the corner into your apartment, or is there a tight corner in your corridor or something?
Yeah.
And as much as they don't affect how you can surf when you get to the water, it's going to make it a lot harder to go surfing, isn't it? If every you get a couple of hours when you go surfing, if you lose half an hour because you have to pull out your soft roof and put roof racks on your car and then do that, that's less time that you're going to be in the water. So yes, I think the focus has got to be on, can you surf the board? Where is it going to work for you in the water? But you also have to bear into mind, can I carry it? Can I fit it in the car? So yeah, getting a board and sort of taking it off the rack or from whoever you're buying it from, putting it under your arm, seeing, is it comfortable to carry? You are going to hit a point in your surfing where you might get a little bit annoyed that you haven't been able to achieve whatever goals you set for yourself, or you've had a bad surf because of the waves. At times like that, you don't want to put any further obstacles in your way to go, oh, I'm not going to go surfing this time, just because you find it a bit annoying to carry your board.
I have to be able to go on my own as well, because like I need to be able to go on my own. And when I was hiring them as well, I met up with a girl, and she had her own board, and I had to try and find a surf place that was open in Newquay.
Yeah.
So I was like walking around Newquay town, and found one, but her boyfriend had to carry my board. It was like, if I was going on my own, it's just like, it would put me off, because it'd be the idea of trying to carry it by myself.
Yeah.
It's just,
yeah. Well, just employ a caddy and take a caddy around with you all the time. They can wait on the shore with some snacks. I reckon you got a bit
and a camera, so you can always coach yourself, so you see what you need to improve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
But yeah, I think that's definitely a good shout when you're buying a second-hand board. Make sure that you pick it up. And as I say, if you've got any, send them over to me and Ross, and we can have a look over them and give you our opinion.
Great, thank you so much.
You'll be surprised how much surfboard you can fit in a little car, though.
Oh,
yeah. I've got a Golf, so it's sort of like medium size.
Oh, you get
5-door or 3-door?
5.
Oh, mate, yeah, you'll be fine.
I had a little 5-door Mazda 323. I could fit a 9'1" longboard in it.
9'1".
Or 4 8-foot foamies, I think, at one point.
Say that again.
4 8-foot foam boards in there without having to put roof racks on it.
What?
It was a target.
Yeah.
What was this?
Yeah. 3 8-foot and 2 7-foot sticking out of the sunroof.
Ross, have you got any questions from Adeline that she wrote? I think she wrote a couple on the Facebook page, didn't she?
Yeah. So she said, when would you go for a smaller board, or how gradually would you reduce the board size?
Okay, so going to a smaller board is, for Adeline, going for a smaller board, you have to be very clear on the reasons why you're going for a smaller board. Are you going for a smaller board because you think that you should do, or are you going for a smaller board because you're actually feeling yourself being limited by the board you're on at the moment? If you're just going for it because you think it's about time to get a shorter board, it probably isn't. Going back to what we said right at the start, the most important thing about a surfboard is that you can catch lots of waves on it. If you can't catch waves, you're not going to enjoy your surfing as much. You're not going to progress as much because you're not up and riding on the wave. So don't be in a rush to get a smaller and smaller board. We were saying about, Beth, how mini mals allow you to sort of experience lots of different areas of surfing, lots of different sort of styles of surfing, sorry. So whether you want to turn a lot, whether you want to cruise. A mini mal is a very adaptable, very flexible board in terms of what it will allow you to do. But once you hone in on one of those things, you will feel it sort of start to limit you, and you might want to start experimenting with it, with sort of new boards, getting a bit shorter board, for example. But you want to make sure that, like, if you're on a mini mal, you want to be out there catching every wave that you go for. You don't want to be trying to paddle for a wave and then 6 waves out of 10, the wave just gets away from you. That's not the right time to be dropping down. If you're catching every wave you're going for, you're up, you're turning that board, you're riding along the unbroken face, and you're kind of thinking, oh, it feels a bit stiff to turn. This board isn't turning quite as sharply as I want. I'm not able to get the board into this position on the wave where I want. Then definitely start playing around with different boards. Try a few shorter boards. Same as when you get in a mini mal. Try shorter boards before buy them, or get a bit of advice on it. But I'm always sort of more leaning towards the side of your board will tell you when it's time for you to get a shorter board. Until you're getting every wave you want to go for and riding it in a way that you're enjoying, you'll feel that board start to limit you, and you go, okay, now's the time to sort of have a bit of a play. So hopefully, it's hard to know because Adeline's not here to answer, but hopefully that answers that question. Any more, Ross?
The other part of it was she's quite keen to get a longboard at some point. Any size guide and tips for choosing one?
Because she wants to go shorter and longer.
Yeah, I think so. That's a good way to go.
For a surfboard, I like it. So if you want to go for a longboard is a board, by definition, is a board that's, well, technically 8'6", but most people, it depends which books you're reading, but generally over 9 foot is classed as a longboard. So in terms of the shape, again, that does come down to your surfing ability and also to your size. So, for example, Adeline, yourself, Adeline's quite short. That if she gets say she got a 9.6 or 10-foot board that was quite wide and had a lot of volume, that's a lot of volume in the board that you might not actually be able to maneuver it that well. It will just be like a barge for you. So for Adeline and for yourself, Beth, if you were going onto a longboard, you probably want something that's a little bit more drawn out. So potentially a little bit more performancey, but just that sort of a slightly lower volume longboard, so it will still be responsive for you. On the other hand, if it was myself or Ross getting a longboard, we'd need to get one with slightly, if it was our sort of first step up to a longboard, get one with slightly more volume to it, so that you're benefiting of that cruising and riding. Ultimately, the choice of board does a lot depend as well on what you want to do on a longboard. So do you just want to be very, very traditional longboard and where drop into a wave, you set your line and you just cruise? In which case there are plenty of sort of gliders and slightly longer boards that are a little bit narrower, that will give you that super long ride. Karma surfboards do a lot of really good shapes in that sort of range. Do you want to be on a longboard but you still absolutely love just carving up and down the wave? In which case you want to go for a pretty performancey longboard. You might even consider either a thruster setup. We'll go through fins on another session, but a thruster setup or a 2+1 or something. Or if you want a little bit of an all-rounder, do you want to be? Have you sort of seen people nose riding a hang 5, hang 10, and that, and you think that looks really good, and that's what you want to be going for? In which case you want a nose ride, which is a board with a nice big sort of scoop under the nose that's going to give you that lift. There are a lot of different types, so it does depend on the style of surfing that you're looking to achieve. But in general, you do want to make sure it's relative to your size as well. There's no point going out on a giant board that's for someone myself or Ross's size, that might be a long board that you can cruise around on. For someone your guys' size, that might as well be a stand-up paddleboard. And you stand there and not do anything. So you do want it to be something that you are going to be able to turn and maneuver a little bit as well. But same as with all the boards, try new ones. People can describe to you what a board can do and how it can be, especially on second-hand surfboards. The classic phrase is "goes well in any condition." And I've seen so many adverts say like "goes well in any conditions," goes well in 1 foot up to 10 foot. And it's, does it though? It's like saying, it's like going back to the cars analogy. It's like saying, "Oh yeah, I'm selling this VW Golf, great off-road, great on a racetrack, great for pootling around town." It's like no car is actually great for all of those, and there's no surfboard that is great in every single possible condition you can ever ride. Certainly some boards are suited to certain styles of wave, but at the same time it depends on, you look around YouTube or any kind of for any sort of surfing videos, Vimeo, anything like that, and you'll see very good surfers surfing boards which you wouldn't expect to go well in those waves. You can trying to think of some sort of famous films that have got it, something like Endless Summer 2, something like that. And you've got Wing up there taking a longboard out, like Joker and Hardbreak, and they're waves that most people wouldn't even consider taking a board like that. You look at longboarding films and there's guys out on huge logs out at Pipeline. If any of us went out on a longboard at a Pipeline, if we went on a board at Pipeline, we'd probably get folded in. But
what's a Pipeline?
Pipeline's the name of a wave in Hawaii.
Oh, right.
It's one of the
big barreling reef break.
Yeah, super steep, super barreling reef break is usually regarded as one of the best waves in the world. But it's just incredibly hollow, breaks over a very shallow reef. But there's plenty of guys that will go out there on a fish, which we would consider usually a sort of fairly smallish wakeboard, and they'll be out there running it. There's guys who'll go out on a longboard. So to say that one board's suited to a certain style of wave is quite hard. It's all, as with everything that we've gone through in pretty much all the theory sessions, it's a combination of different factors. It's partly the board, the characteristics, the volume, the length, the shape, everything. It's partly to do with you, your physical size. It's to do with your surfing skill. I mean, you can get some people who can be exactly the same size, very different surfing skills. You need completely different boards. About the waves that you're going to ride, typically in the UK, we have waves that don't pack as much, they don't have as much power to them as waves that you're going, say, even as close as like Southwest France. The waves break much closer to the beach, generally have a bit more power to them. So the types of boards that will be suited will change through those. But yeah, just trying lots of different shapes is going to be the
key. Does your average like intermediate surfer usually have like more than one board then for different conditions, or can you get away with having one board and still like going out quite a lot?
Most people, when they like, surfing's fairly expensive thing, like to buy kit. I mean, a surfboard's not cheap. Most people would have one board, I think, to start off with, but again, it's a hard one to say. I know lots of people who have questionable surfing ability but might have 6 or 7 different boards, and they spend, every time you want to go for a surf, they're trying to decide, oh no, is it right for this board, is it right for this board? And sometimes it's better to just have one board, and you go in, you get to know that board really well. You know what you like about it, you know what you don't like about it. So then if you do want to buy a board, you know which aspect of that board you want to keep and what bit you want to change. But on the other hand, if you've got lots of boards, you get to try lots of different styles. And there's a flip sides for everything. If you've got lots of different boards and you're constantly changing between boards, you might not be developing the technique in the best way to just get used to riding the wave. Getting on a board and actually just getting used to that feeling of riding wave. I mean, I've got when I started out, I had one board for, how many years did I have? Just one surfboard. Probably must have been like 2 or 3 years. After I came off the foam, it must have been 2 or 3 years where I just had one board, and that was all I surfed. And I found that useful because I got to know what that board did, what that board didn't do, know the limits. So then when I went to buy a new board, I knew which aspects I enjoyed. But yeah, I think trying lots of boards is quite cool. It's quite a good idea. Going renting lots, borrowing them, trying them. But in terms of buying loads, it's not super necessary. Get one that works for you and get used to riding it, really.
Cool.
All right. Have we got any other?
I would say when you're buying from having a mini mal, I'd recommend hanging on to the mini mal as well for those days where you might just want to go back, get your pop-up sorted again, get everything there. You've got that bigger option that you do feel more comfortable on. If you're having a bad spell, go back on that. You'll be popping up every time, feel really good. Your next surf on your other board will generally feel better just because you've got that mental state.
Yeah.
I'd always think, hang on to your mini mal.
Yeah.
Because
I wish I'd never
buy a new board. You're not always fully ready for it for all those circumstances. So, yeah, that'd be my top tip.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, but I think as soon as we're back running sessions again, Beth, borrow one of the emails. If we get conditions like we did on that last session you came along to, where it was nice and clean, it wasn't too big, everyone was sort of catching plenty of waves, getting out back, then that'd be ideal, those sort of waves, to be trying out new boards, seeing what they feel like. You may jump on it and go, oh no, actually, I think I'll stick with the foamy a bit longer and sort of hone my skills here. Or you might go, oh no, I like this. The big change that I always notice, and that a lot of people notice between a foam board and a hard board, is that once you're on that unbroken wave, it's the speed. You feel that board going so much faster. It just feels more responsive. If you're putting a bit of weight on your toes or on your heels, you can feel the board responds under you. And it's a really exciting time of your surfing to be sort of trying out new boards and working out where you want to go with it.
Yeah, it's how much you can get out as well, isn't it? It's like time, but also because I've got problems with my wrist and things like that, I'm a bit limited by that too. So
yeah, but
hopefully by the end of the summer, be able to progress a decent amount.
Yeah. Out of interest, like, is with the wrist, do you ever wear like a support or anything to help it, or does that not really?
Yeah, it's all to do with my job. So I have to like put quite a lot of pressure when I'm scanning
Yeah.
You're just like doing that every day. It's just made it like weak, but it's not too bad at the moment. It's just quite like temperamental. So I used to, because I didn't get out that much surfing, I'd like go surfing all day and be like quite tired, but then I literally wouldn't be able to like use my arm the next day.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's just like learning that I don't have to overdo it as well, and just a couple of hours is fine.
Nice.
Yeah, but I've got like a wrist brace to wear sometimes.
No, I don't.
I haven't been surfing with it yet though.
Friend broke his wrist quite badly skiing one winter, and when he sort of, obviously that had wait until it had repaired and everything, but when he was rehabbing the wrist, he surfed for quite a while with a wrist support that sort of went all the way down there, and just with a couple of bars, just so that when he found it was a moment when he was pushing up, and just having that little bit of extra support there made a difference. I didn't know if that had helped.
Yeah, I haven't tried it, but I think I will, especially if it plays up again. I'll give it a go.
Nice. So it doesn't look like anyone else is joining us. Have you got any other questions, Beth, or are we?
The only other thing was just like about the fins, but if you say you're going to do a different session,
that was sort of requested a few weeks ago. No, it was requested a few weeks in a few weeks' time, I think. I'm just going to find the vote of what's it called, the different topics.
It's just because I have no idea about the fins, but it might be a bit beyond what I need to know. Because second-hand surfers, you see
ocean safety is next.
Ocean safety is next week. So we've got ocean safety next week, then onshore and offshore winds, then travel destinations, and then fin setups. Fin setups there's a lot to know.
Okay.
I'd rather wait for another session for that, because this will end up. I don't think my battery will last long enough for that.
No, that's fine.
In terms of short term, if you're looking to get a mini mal, I would recommend generally a thruster setup, which is like 3 fins. Going back to what we were saying about a mini mal being able to allow you to experience lots of different styles of surfing, a thruster setup is going to be the easiest way to sort of change between those different styles. It's going to have a good bit of hold, but it'll also enable you to turn. So that would be the go-to that I would say for if you're looking to buy a second-hand board.
Okay.
For a thruster setup.
Okay. You see some without fins sometimes and without leashes, and I'm like, oh, I wouldn't want to buy one and like not have a clue how to like sort it out so you can actually surf it.
Fin systems. Sometimes you'll replace the fins from say like the bog standard just plastic polycarbonate fin or plastic fins that come with a board. You'll want to put on some fiberglass fins or some carbon fins, and when we go through fins, we'll talk about how they can change, how even keeping the board the same, just swapping the fins can do it.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of people will sell the board because they found those fins actually work well in one of their other boards and change them through. It's not necessarily a problem to buy a board without fins, as long as they haven't been smashed off or something. As long as it's actually got a fin system in place, but it's just that someone's keeping the fins, you can get a set. Depends on which kind of fin system it's got. The 3 most common you'll see will be FCS1, FCS2, and Futures. Certainly FCS1 you can pick up, which a lot of the older mini mals are. You can pick up a set of basic fins pretty cheap. You'd be able to get a set of basic fins for the ages since I bought. To be honest, I'd probably have a set of basic
one's probably about 20 quid.
Kicking around, swap you for a couple of beers or something like that age of fins. The FCS1 are pretty easy to come by. FCS2s are a lot more expensive because they are the current FCS fin setup. Futures have been around for a while and they've kept the same basic fin box, so you can find the bog standard level fins for Futures relatively. I think they're a bit more expensive than FCS1 because they're still in production, but most people, I don't think you'd struggle to find a set of fins for any other systems.
Okay, cool. The only other thing, just quickly, was a lot of the adverts say there's like a little bit of damage, but it's like knowing what's too much damage. But I guess you could just like message you if it's
if you want to actually pick up a board, there are a couple of telltale signs to look for. Actually, while I remember, if on buying board, we did a blog post, it must have been a couple of years ago now, all about different things to look for when you're buying your first board. If you search back on our website in the blog or news section, you'll find that blog post about buying your first surfboard, and it will go through all of this if you forget any of these details or anything. Yeah. But generally with dings, assuming that you don't want to fix the ding yourself or don't know how to fix the ding,
no.
You want it to be, first of all, it needs to be watertight. A really easy way to check that is to run your fingernail over it. If you can get your fingernail in through that fiberglass at the outside, that means water can get there at all. If in doubt, if there's a bit of a crack and you're like, oh, I'm not sure, get someone else to look at it who does know. But that's usually a good way to check. The other one is to sort of squeeze around the board. Don't smash your thumb through it or anything. Give it a little squeeze. If it feels like a bit squishy and spongy compared to the rest of the board, that's a sign that it's got water damage. Which means water has got into there, even if it's fixed and smooth, but you can see around the repair. Quite often it goes a bit yellowy around the board as well if it's taken on water. And that's basically damaging the foam core of the board, which will mean that it's more likely to take more dings. The board might be imbalanced and not surf quite right. Other things to think on with dings. If they're saying it's a professional ding repair, which I see quite a lot on adverts, they say has a ding but it's been professionally repaired. A professional repair, often you'll see like a different colour. If you run your hand over it, you shouldn't feel it at all. Okay, there shouldn't be any sort of raised little lump. It should be completely a professional ding repair. That will be completely smooth. The shape of the board should be as it was before it was dinged. That's the whole point of it. If someone's telling you it's had a professional ding repair and you run your hand over it, you can feel it's like there's a bump where they put the extras. That means they've done it themselves and they've tried to fog it off. And I always think if someone's doing that with the ding repair, what are they not telling you about on the board?
Yeah.
Especially if you're not don't have the knowledge about dings and everything to be able to just look at it and pick it out yourself. But again, anything that you're concerned about, snap a picture of it with your phone, ping it to me or Ross, and we can let you know. The other option is, rather than going down the like secondhand surfboards route, there are a lot of. You live Truro, did you say?
Yeah.
Cool. So you've actually got a bit of a wider range. So in Newquay, there are a lot of good secondhand surfboard shops that you can go and find some really good boards from. Karma surfboards have a lot. Sunset Surf down near the Red Lion, Slide and Glide have some really good used boards, and there's a few others scattered through town as well. There's it's not called the Longboard House, it's at Custard Point, isn't it? Yeah, Custard Point have a lot of boards out the front. Further down, there's a really good one called Crogden down in Hale, which isn't too far. You guys, just under down near the train arches, by the railway bridge, the viaduct thing.
It's got some crazy designs in there.
Yeah, Crogden's got some really good boards, and it's a good one to go to for those sort of second-hand mini mouse sort of shapes.
I've seen them on Facebook, I think. Quite cheap.
Yeah, they're really good. They usually have a pretty good rate. It's a tiny little shop, but they pack a lot of boards in there. And then pretty much most towns will have a surfboard shop. I know Perranporth, there's quite a few. I don't know the names. Bathsheba, yeah, Bathsheba's does use boards, and there's a couple of other shops in Perranporth. But going to a reputable shop is a really good shout if you're not really sure what you're getting, because you can talk it over with them. Especially if it's a reputable surf shop, it's one that's been recommended either by us or by someone else in the surfing community who you trust, then that shop is not going to want to risk their reputation by telling you that a board is something when it's not. You know? Or, no, if it's same with anything like secondhand car dealers, you get some good ones, some bad ones, but by going to one that you know is good. For example, I know that Amanda down at Sunset Surf in Newquay.
That's where I got my wetsuit, actually.
Oh, did you?
I had a voucher from there. I left my old job in Plymouth, and my colleagues got me because I was just getting into surfing last year. They got me a voucher for there, so I got my wetsuit from there.
Amanda and her team there are absolutely brilliant. So if you go in there, if you were looking for you had a rough guide of what you were looking for, they're not going to grab just gun or like a big wave board out of the rack and go, oh no, this is the one, just because it's one of their mates has brought it in. They want you to have a board that is going to work for you so that you enjoy your surfing, and then when you want your next board, you go back there. And that's the way that good surf shops operate, is that they want to find you a board that does work perfectly for you, because it's that repeat business. There is going to come a time where you want another board, and if you go, well, hang on, I got this one off these guys and I've had it for 3 years and it's brilliant, let's see what else they've got. So yeah, going direct to surf shops is I would say that's certainly for your first board, it's probably a more reliable, and it's also giving you the opportunity to compare different boards, put a few under your arm, stuff like that, rather than just you can often feel quite pressured. I've bought a lot of boards off the second-hand surfboard site and stuff, but sometimes if you turn up somewhere, you almost feel like you've made a bit of a commitment just by telling them that you're going to come and view the board. So sometimes you might not feel quite as happy, especially if you're a bit less experienced about boards. You might not feel quite as happy to go, no, I don't think this one's right, and walk away. Whereas in a surf shop, if you pick up 3, 4, 5 different boards there and none of them quite feel right, they'll completely understand. They'll be annoyed. They want to sell your board at the end of the day, but there's no pressure on you there to actually buy one. It's a good point,
especially like at these times when there's no shops open. You don't want to rush into getting something online that isn't right. It's better to just wait and find something right.
I think there are, from the rumours I've seen in the chats I've seen around online, and conversations with sort of contacts in Newquay, there will be more and more starting to open again soon. Yeah. They might have limited availability. That might be like it's with supermarkets, only a few in allowed at the same time. Make sure you social distance, but I think you will start to see, certainly over the next few weeks, quite a few surf shops and stuff opening up, and you can go and find a board.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, so what was next week's again, Russ? The ocean.
You said safety.
Yeah, I think
ocean safety.
Ocean safety. So yeah, if anyone wants to join us next week, I'll confirm it on the group, but we'll aim for about 7 o'clock again next Friday, and we'll go over ocean safety. So if anyone's got any questions, any specific they want to know about ocean safety, then ping them in the comments underneath. And,
how not to die.
How not to die. That's usually high priority. I think what would be next, because ocean safety, it's going to rely on knowing a little bit about certain things, like rips, for example, and stuff. So what I'll do is I'll go over a little bit of theory beforehand, maybe chat for 10 minutes about it, and then see what questions all of you guys have, if there's anything. But at the same time, if you've got things that you've always wanted to know, you're not sure how things work at the ocean, you're not sure what you should be doing, how to get anything at all, just ping us a message, ping us a comment. But yeah, we'll see you guys next week, I guess.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was really good.
No worries. Have a good evening.
See you next week.
See you soon.
Bye.
Yeah.